There's not one thing that I don't use today that I didn't learn in the Marine Corps.
Hey everyone, welcome to Trace of Burnout. I'm Roger.
And I'm Dan.
And in our virtual studio with us today, we have Marine veteran Mr. Joe Adcox. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well, gentlemen. I appreciate again the opportunity and it's good to see you again.
Well, we became Facebook friends, and I mean that's as close a bond as one could possibly ever have. We
Absolutely.
became on social media, and we reached out to you because we love having all services on the show, and sometimes here in the Fayetteville Fort Bragg area, we have to go looking a little bit for non-Army people because you can't throw a stick without hitting an Army veteran here in Fayetteville, and so we reached out to you and invited you onto the show, and here we are today. So thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's get started the same way we always do. Does your family have a history of service?
My brother did a little bit of time in the Army during Desert Storm time frame. I just remember seeing him like leaving on a bus one day, and like out the window, the whole, quintessential, see that type of thing. Not a lot of history, no. Grandparents on, I think, mom's side maybe, but I was the first. I was the first one that kind of went that direction, even though it didn't really look like that's what it was going to be. Definitely the first Marine. There's other younger Marines now in the family, but I
Yeah.
was the first one.
Where'd you grow up?
So very good question. I was actually born in West Palm Beach, Florida. Stayed there roughly to about the age of 6. As with the demographic down there, all my dad's side is Cuban. So when I left from there with my mother up to the Chattanooga Valley area, where I pretty much went through my high school years and things like that, sports and all that other stuff, that was from about age 6 to till when left the Marine Corps, or left to go to the Marine Corps in '99. So hence the accent that I've got. It's a good old Southern accent, which
Very Cuban. Yeah.
as I've gotten older, it just adds to the redneck charisma, is what I like to call it.
Redneck charisma. Love it. So without a real family history of service, what led you to join?
Well, at the time, let's see, between the ages 18 and 20, or really, because I graduated at 17, just a little bit early. But I was just going down the wrong path. Um, when I was raised by my grandparents, they ended up moving like between my junior and senior year. And I was like, you know what? I play sports. I'm popular at school. I was like, there's just no way, not for my senior year, scholarship opportunity, possibilities and things like that. So I ended up renting a room my senior year. And then I stayed there with friends, family for until I left for the Marine Corps when I was 20 years old. And then, as you can imagine, like in that point in anybody's life, right, you're very influential, and things like that. And I just started going down the wrong path, and it went fast. And next thing you know, I'm 2 years in it, and I'm just like, I got to do something about this. So I was a direct shipper. Within 7 days, I was gone.
So why the Marines?
Well, actually, my buddy, good friends at the time, we still periodically stay in contact, and his name was Tim. He had been going to MEPS and interested in things like that, and he goes, "Let's just go together." He's like, "They have this thing called the buddy program," and I was like, "What?" I'd never been to a recruiter before in my life, right? But he had been in the delayed entry program a little bit and things like that. And so I went up there, and funny thing is, and the whole reason why I ended up probably being a grunt is because I thought I was going to be spy rigging and doing things like that in boot camp, right? So I was like, yeah, whatever that is, sign me up, right? They're like, oh, 300, you made it, easy. And, but being raised by my grandparents and things like that, I just had a good work ethic, They were in their 60s. I was a kid in the 90s, 80s and 90s at the time, and they just instilled that into me. So, like, I mean, I was working jobs and I was always on time and all that other stuff, no matter what I was doing that I shouldn't have been doing, right? Even if there was no sleep or whatever, because of that work ethic. And then that's what the Marines kind of stood for in my eyes. Like, the hardest one, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. I was an athlete, right? But my buddy had been talking to him, and that was just like, okay, yeah, let's do that. So it wasn't really a preference of anything other than I needed to do something, and that was the one that definitely would turn things around, whatever, you know. So
So when did you enlist and then ship off for basic training?
I enlisted. Actually, my certificate of entering into the DEP is June 30th of 1999, and then my Armed Forces active duty base date was July 7th of '99 is when it started. So that's literally how I didn't even know rank structure or nothing when I went, but I did know how to work hard, move fast, and just kind of learn along the way. Because of that work ethic that I'd learned from my grandparents.
Yeah, you said you played sport. I mean, what sports were you into in high school, and did they prepare you for boot camp?
Football, I wrestled a little bit, started a little bit in basketball in the beginning, but as it went, from sophomore into the latter years, it was primarily baseball and football. Um, and I had grandparents growing up, but I didn't really have like that fatherly figure from one generation to the next. So coaches filled in a lot of those gaps for me because I worked hard, right? And just by doing that, like my body started to naturally start to take an athletic shape because my dad played minor league ball, you know, because they do spring training and stuff like that in Southern Florida, West Palm
Yep.
Beach, that type of area. So that's where my background came from, and just putting those two together, it was just like, I even said it in my retirement video as I'm sitting there talking to him, and I said, all you really had to do was be somewhere on time, make sure you're in the right uniform at the time, shine your boots, and just do what you're told. And then once you do that for a little while, you learn what to tell people, but you're just telling them to do the same thing. And then you got to show them what right looks like, you
Yeah.
know. So I don't know. It just came naturally to me.
It's a natural fit. Yeah.
hmm
So you went to Paris Island?
I did, and I retired from there as well. Um, so yeah, went to Paris Island again, '99. Um, bounced around quite a few duty stations. I think I had seven in 21 years. So I was right on par. Um, yeah, Paris Island.
You've already said you had a pretty good work ethic and you played sports and stuff, so you were physically ready for those things in basic training. But was there anything that you had a difficulty adjusting to?
Um, definitely dealing with others that just don't look like they're giving their full potential. But I was never one to, because I was always a short guy. I mean, I'm 5'4", so like I was never a bully, but I was an athlete, but I could get along with, a lot of people. But the one thing I couldn't stand is just like you not pulling your weight or not being part of the team or, everybody's cleaning, sitting and watching. But, just like I said before, in that 2.5 year time frame before I joined, I mean, I lived a pretty full life, you know, from left to right. And that's, what got me to where I was like, hey, I gotta take charge of this. And I can't do it myself. So yeah, probably just being patient enough because they already create that chaotic atmosphere. What drill instructors do, but that's what they're supposed to do because like we can't drop you in combat, but we can simulate what the emotional state, psychological studies that have been done on
Yeah.
being able to operate under stress. You know,
Yeah. You were infantry.
yes,
So after you got out of Paris Island, you then went to the School of Infantry, right?
yes,
Which it's here in North Carolina, isn't it?
yeah. It's just right. It's Camp Geiger, close to
Geiger.
in the
That's yeah,
Lagoon area, that type of thing. Yeah,
Where
yeah.
is it?
Camp Geiger is what it's
What's it
called.
near?
It's in North Carolina. It's decently close to
It's not far
Lejeune.
from Lejeune. Yeah.
Yeah,
Near
it's like
Lejeune.
right there
Okay.
with it.
I kind of figured. Okay.
And then that way, when you graduate, it's very easy to just put you all on a bus and just take you right over to the
I was gonna
barracks.
say, or make you walk. I mean,
And then that way you get your welcome,
there you go.
not only from whatever, but, you know, walking along the barracks and like, here we go, brand new. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing.
That's something
Um,
the Army has in common with the Marine Corps.
With your basic training there at Paris Island, because you guys all do basic training there, but then you go off to your different schools and stuff, right? So,
yep.
how many from your basic training platoon wound up at the School of Infantry with you?
Uh, I mean, just guessing percentile of class because they have their MOSs, based on the size of them and percentage goes where. So a large portion does end up going infantry because that's a large part of the force. And the more technical schools that have to do with specificity, right? They don't need as many boat spaces, is what they end up calling, or slots. So I'd say it's probably around the 25 to 30 percentile overall. When with the other ones being more like 5, 6% here, and what I mean, that type of thing.
So you went there with a fair amount of buddies.
Oh yeah, and then once you get there, they have enough. They even if some got there early, if they don't have enough to class up, is what they call it. Then they'll hold there, and then go through doing like security and gate guard and mess hall and stuff like that. So
Okay. How was it there at the School of Infantry?
it's just like the next tier or the next level. Like, you know, um, you feel more like okay, a service member camaraderie. It's an open, not squad base, but open barracks on the inside. You have your own wall locker, things like that, instead of a foot locker. You get liberty, out in town. I mean, it's still a very controlled school environment, especially at the beginner level schools. But the main thing is slowly introducing those things, because when they're, I used to give the pre-liberty speech on Family Day at Paris Island for the battalion, right? And one of the things we cover is like, hey, they are in their most fragile state. I know you're only going to have them for a day or whatever, but like they're very structured and rigid in their routine, right? So even after the 10 days boot leave, what they call it, before they go there, um, they still haven't figured out what right looks like because
Yeah.
so they try to transition them out of boot camp a little bit more gradual, especially as they get into third phase and what they have now, fourth phase, which is only a couple weeks after the crucible. They start a little bit earlier now, and they're also doing the various stages of integration with the genders and the MOSs. They're doing that service wide, obviously, but those things were in the talks when I was still in the head shed executive part of it. So it's neat to see. I mean, I see more and more things about females doing more flight stuff, doing more ground stuff, and things like that. And it's good to see because when I got asked about it, sitting in front of the CG, like, what are your thoughts on the whole integration and all that other stuff? I was just like, look, I don't care who has what. All I care about is the right Marine for the job. I don't care if she can have a ponytail or a shape. I don't care. That's all I care about, right? And as a drill instructor, younger, you would be like, move fast, do what you're told, and then learn as you go and get online when I say to. Don't care what you look like, right?
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter. Um, Overall, I may have got off topic just a little bit,
Oh, that's good stuff.
but yeah, no, I mean, because we were looking into a lot of that before I retired, and now I'm about to hit 5 years retired, and
Yeah.
it's good to see some of that stuff, kind of finally coming to fruition. You know,
Here's a very serious question. Did you bring in the Millennium Y2K at the School of Infantry?
right? So I graduated
Were you
boot
under
camp
a
October.
poncho liner like on a land nav course or something?
You know what? I may have actually been no, because I was probably at my first duty station because
Okay. Okay.
the 0311s you go through like pretty much straight. There's no liberty and stuff like that for like a month. Machine gunners and the other O3 MOSs will stay a few weeks longer and then they'll go
Okay.
just right there at Lejeune. But nah.
Is that where you wound up? Your first duty station was Lejeune?
Yeah, I was there at I guess they call it now Camp Lejeune, but yeah, I was there with First Battalion, 6 Marines from '99 until mid 2003 when I left to go to the drill field for the first time. A what do you call it? I guess shooting fire sergeant, just ready to go. Um, but yeah, that duty station was my in reality my only non-combat deployments. Went to Japan. This was before September 11th. So
Yeah.
went to Japan a couple times. Got to go to Guam for a little bit. Got to go to Korea for a little bit. Things like that. And that was when there was still Liberty Incorporated, which I think they're back to that now in some places when it comes to being on deployment. But I mean, I'm sure you guys know from deployments after that, it was like, nope, there ain't no Liberty nowhere. So it was neat to have that little bit of exposure in my very first duty station as a junior Marine. And then when you come back, and then by that time, combat operations have started, you know, by the time I come back from the drill field. So,
For those pre 9/11 cruises to Guam, Japan, wherever else, what were you doing on those?
so those are basically go and train in different environments for the most part. You do like jungle warfare training there, where you're just totally immersed, learning a lot of things that have to do with like cliffs and rigging for tow. You just all kinds of stuff, especially a lot of belays and um, rappelling and things like that. They have things like the endurance course there, mud pits and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And then they would send little detachments out for a month here and there to like Russia for a little bit, Guam, Korea. I think weapons company even went down to Australia. Um, and then basically did the same deployment, come back, dwell time, and then go back, but a little bit of different experiences, being able to go to mainland Japan, Tokyo, climbing Mount Fuji, which I still have my climbing stick. And a lot of Marines that from that time frame be like, ooh, I got it, or be like, oh man, I don't know where mine went. You know what I mean?
Of course.
So it's good times, good times.
How long was your initial enlistment?
I guess your basic 4 years. Yeah. So for your, I don't know how it works in the Army, but for your initial 4 years, like even if you get out at 4 years, you're still 4 years of inactive ready reserve, which
Yeah.
Yeah.
really only means we're keeping tabs on you just in case, need to come back. And then after that, you're officially out. On the
Yeah.
officer side, sometimes what they'll do is they'll go the reservist route for a little while.
I know
After
guys
that.
that got called up on the IRR and got deployed. Yeah, it
Mhm.
was. These would have all been officers, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, tell us about where you were when 9/11 happened and kind of the immediate
So this
aftermath.
is very, very, very good story. So I was a corporal at the time. I had flew ADBON or advanced party to Bridgeport to go through the salt climbers course. So Marine Corps' version, like the base version of rock climbing, right? Hanging belays, all that stuff. So I was there probably about a week or so, and they were having us hike up and going by, conditioning packs, all that stuff. And I was in the head or the restroom because it was early in the morning, and somebody came in and said they bombed the Pentagon, and we were like, "What? Where'd you hear that from? No way." Ironically enough, that day the rest of the battalion was in the air. So 800 something Marines were on one of those big Boeings, literally in the air when they shut everything down, and they grounded them in Utah instead of coming all the way to California. So by this time we're like, and then we start getting a little bit more information here and there, kind of mess training up a little bit, obviously. But yeah, I'll never forget that because I mean we were right there, and it was almost like, dude, game day is finally here. We've been practicing for all this time, right? And that was kind of like the thought process at the time, you know.
Yeah. So because the rest of the unit got grounded, I mean all flights were shut down for days,
Hmm.
and then very slowly, they started letting certain flights go out or whatever. So did once flights were able to resume, did you guys just continue training like the rest of the unit showed up and then you went through the assault climbers course, or was there already a change of mission uh, ready to go?
No, not for us because the way the Marine Corps works, because we're the nation's force in readiness, they have units that are what are called air alert or whatever the case may be that can be wheels up within 24 hours or sometimes even less with all gear because it's already pre-staged and everything like that. But what they ended up doing was, as if I remember correctly, they just immediately started bussing them in. You know what I mean? From there to California to try to not throw too big of a wrench in normal training operations
Yeah.
because, hey, now game day is here. More than ever, we need to make sure they get this training. You know what I mean? So I think we had everybody there within a couple of days before they started the flights again because there was just no way to wait that
Charlie
long.
Mike.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Those,
we
those,
continued on with
those are wild
training
times.
there. Yeah, we continued on with training there, and then when we came back, um, we it was kind of weird. Let's see, that was 2001. Yeah, because 1-6 wasn't slotted to go um, during that time. I think we went ahead and did our same deployment, like the just a regular UDP, but they got a little bit more strict. I can't remember like the dates and the time frames, but somewhere around in there. Because I didn't leave that first duty station until 2003 to go to Paris Island, and I did two Okinawa. So there's no way I did two before coming in at 99. You know what I mean?
Prior to prior to 9/11, were you already thinking about staying in? Maybe not making it a career, but were you already thinking about reenlisting and staying in longer?
So when I was at boot camp, and I still talk to this drill instructor, I asked him. I said, "Hey, what do I have to do to be a drill instructor?" Right? Because I was like, "Hey, this is what I'm telling you. This is what I need to do." And he said, "You got to reenlist." I was like, "Ugh." So then I go to my first duty station. But me and a lot of my peers actually used to keep a logbook of reasons why not to reenlist. Sitting in this fighting hole and it's filling up with water and it's middle of the night and we're freezing, right? Oh, they ran out of hot wets in the field. Yay. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But I was young at the time. I was married. I got married young, and so I had a little bit more responsibilities and things like that. So, and like I said before, it was just easy for me. So it was just like, why not? Right at that point. But I got those were like Lance Corporal days. Once I picked up NCO, did a couple super squads, deployment, went through the sniper and doc. I was like, you know what? There's a lot of cool stuff you can do in the Marine Corps, right? And then I was like, I know what I want to do first. So I got my orders to go to the drill field. And I graduated DI school before I even had a hash mark. That's how I knew, like, I was like, this is for me. You know what I mean? So, and then that takes us right up to Paris Island.
So when you re-enlisted specifically to go to be a DI.
Yep.
Is that fairly common?
So you can get, so the way that the Marine Corps works is like, if you want to end up, in a certain, like, sergeant major or master gunner sergeant, if you're a technician, tactician or whatever in your MOS, you have to kind of decide early and map out your career, right? Just like you guys did. But there's certain jobs, like, say, for example, the way that I went with drill instructor, assistant marine officer instructor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, um, Orlando, I, the reservist first sergeant, things like that kind of mapped me more towards what they call the TCOM route, training and education command. Vice like the operations side. But I was a sergeant major, right? So once you decide to go, first sergeant and that way for us, I mean, I know you guys got sergeant major or first sergeants too, but and obviously sergeant majors, but the dynamics of that and the equivalent when it comes to the master gunner sergeant or the master sergeant, their jobs. I mean, they're right on par with each other, but their jobs are completely different. One's
Yeah.
more on the executive leadership, one's on the operations side. Basically, how it goes.
When and where was your first combat deployment?
I was stationed in Hawaii with 1-3, and it
That Koa
was yeah. I
or
mean, it's
Lava Dogs and Koa?
Kaneohe Bay is what Marine
Okay.
Corps Base Kaneohe Bay is what it's called. So it's right there on the on Oahu, right outside of Kailua.
Oh
So we're
yeah.
renting it. Kona, that's a different island, isn't it?
No. I don't mean the islands. I mean the Marine battalions. I worked with the Koa and is it Koa KOA?
So they have you.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like their call signs, like the lava
Yeah.
dogs
Yeah.
and
I worked with Lava
American?
Dogs and Koa. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I was with the lava dogs
Yep.
down there with yeah 1-3, yeah 1-3. Yep.
Mhm.
So I did my first two Iraqs there. First one was Hoklania, Haditha Dam area, and then the second one was a little bit of Fallujah, Karma, areas like more remote. My first
Yeah.
one was like we were right there in a little city. You know what I mean? The fob was made out of a old school, and we had vehicles. No, and we did not. We had some vehicles, but we didn't have a lot, so it was mainly foot mounted. The other one was completely different, right? We were out, and our fob was out in the middle of nowhere. We actually butted up with an army unit north, and we cross coordinate with them every once in a while, so we could run, far off operations at like, platoon or, platoon reinforced level. Um,
Yeah.
so and then we all had vehicles on that one, so it was two very different ones.
So you did that. Your first deployment was after your drill instructor time.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you want to picture like this time frame, when I left to go to the drill field from 1-6, there were no RCOs, ACOG, it was all iron sights. I come back as a staff sergeant, right? And I'm like, what in the crap are y'all, what is this, right? Like, so I'm learning from my junior Marines that have been there. Like,
Yeah.
hey, they're throwing out acronyms at me, like RCO, staff sergeant. I'm like, stop. What is RCO? Rifle combat optic. Okay, got you. Right, like, because I'm learning from these guys, because some of them went on the last um, Iraq deployment, the one just before that, or something like that, or maybe it was Afghanistan. I can't remember. So I had a small group in my platoon of the senior Marines, that had one deployment underneath the belt. It just happened to be a combat deployment, And I learned a lot from those guys. And it's cool because what I do now is kind of in that same thing. You got your platoon, you got your company size, and you're training them and things like that. So,
Yeah, it's the E4 mafia, right?
hmm
Okay, well, taking a step back, um, when you were in your basic training, you wanted to become a drill instructor. Then you re-enlisted to become a drill instructor after 9/11. And you go through the school and everything, and then you show up for your duty. Was it everything that you had hoped it would be?
being a drill instructor.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the good and the bad. Dude, I was made to be a drill instructor. Like that's why when I went back as a sergeant major, at the end of my career, I was just like, yeah, we we're gonna get all you hats to do the right thing, but you're gonna be good hats, and obviously it's slang for drill instructor. But yeah, I told people that, and it was also a springboard for my career ultimately because I hit my, that what they call B billet requirement early, and then I got meritoriously promoted there, right? And then as soon as I left there, it was just like boom, 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 you know. Um, yeah, and because I advanced fast too, we didn't even talk about that. I made staff sergeant in 5.5 years, right? And part of that was, yeah, I went from E5 to E6 on the drill field, but I put in half of it my E5 time, and I grinded. You know what I mean? Like little sleep and all that other stuff, and then earned a meritorious promotion there. And that's why when I went back to what we call the fleet, I knew that even as a staff sergeant, I've been out of this game for a little bit. I don't even know what that is on the top of your rifle, right? So I had to humble myself quite a bit because we were doing a combat deployment to Haditha and Haklania area, so um, and it just, my personality, especially the way it is now, and as a good leader, you have to be, because if not, you're gonna fall on your face.
What were some of the challenges that you faced as a drill instructor that you hadn't even thought about, going into it? Because there's always stuff that catches you as a surprise. Like, man, I hadn't even thought about that. What was something that maybe something that happened to you personally, or to a peer, or to one of the soldiers that just caught you totally off guard?
I would say, for me personally, like with me saying like before, I just knew that I was meant to do that. And, I'd looked into it, and I was, not only was I athletic coming in to the Corps, that just got, continued on, right, as part of my experience now. So I guess the most surprising thing for me is how um, psychologically with your peers, right? Because again, I was raised by my grandparents, joined a little bit later, had a work ethic, right? Really didn't have much to go back to type of mentality. I was
Yeah.
married, you know what I mean? Like just to see some of that, like can't do this, and what they call, try to drop on requests, and all this other stuff, and you know, or you see the opposite where they're getting in trouble because you can tell the frustrations and the strain on the marriages, and not seeing the kids and working all the time and not eating correctly and not being able to exercise your body properly.
Yeah.
All those things compound too, you know um, but I don't know. I mean, for me personally, it didn't affect me like that, and it almost made it where, like, hey, I can't be that guy or that gal, like I was made to do this. So I guess just seeing that,
Yeah.
because that's even before PTSD was a thing, mental health was a thing, before all that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
What is the funniest experience you had on the trail as a drill instructor?
The funniest,
Yeah.
um,
I know you got stories.
yeah, but I guess it depends on who you're talking to if it's funny or not.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, let's see here. Oh, probably just something as simple as, at the just what recruits just do in general, like trying to teach them how to drill, and all of a sudden now they just can't even walk, right? And you're just like, just stop, stop. I used to break it down sometimes and be like, all right, look, here's what we're going to do. Kind of let them drop their guard a little bit, especially if like we need you in this formation. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. Be like, just walk like you did before you got here, like you're cruising in the mall for chicks, right? And then just start walking. I'm like, okay, see how your arms and your legs are going opposite of each other when you walk, not like a robot. I said, now all you do is just curl your fingers and just stiffen up just a little bit to make it look good. And then they'd be like, boom. Um, but yeah, just it's kind of like that show. Kids say the darndest things. Recruits do the
Yeah.
darndest things, and they always think they're the first one to think of it. I used to tell the drill
Like children,
instructors.
right?
I used to tell the and see, and that really helps too. Like if you got kids, and most of the drill instructors down there, they got little ones and things like that. But as you go, say if you come later on in your career, or you go. Um, just be a drill instructor later on or whatever, like you understand that dynamic, right? And be like, look, and plus this is somebody's kid. So they a lot of times they're here because of that, or they're really good because that's where they came from. Like they were raised like that. They were kind of built for it, you know. But yeah, they recruits that they're all different. They all look different, but ultimately they all do the same thing, and then that's why they think they're the first one to do it.
Yes,
Dan, do you
I
concur?
I agree. I agree 100%. There were, I would start off, this is after my first, I don't know, 2, 3 cycles. I would start off my in brief by saying, or by telling the trainees, there is nothing you can try to do that I have not seen before. We have seen it all. You cannot hide stuff from us. We will find it all. We will catch it all. It did not fail. Did not fail.
Every time.
They would, there's only so many places that you can hide stuff in the bay, right? We would find it all.
Yeah, one of my favorite, being able to go back and being a sergeant major down there is, and then having a daughter at the time that's like 16, 17, 18, somewhere around in there, roughly about the same age, and then you got them coming in, being born after you came in. Like once I realized, I was like, oh man, these kids are being born in 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
golly, I came in 99, like, woo.
Yeah.
But being able to like literally sit down with them and be like, look, and talk to them like a fatherly type of figure or something like that, because you're the sergeant major, you know what I mean? Or calling their parents or getting on a speaker phone call with their parents and be like, hey, I got, Jesse here or whatever. He's saying that he's not having a good time, like it's rough, and then to hear them talk to their parents or hear their parents voice sometimes, I look back at that and I know there's Marines that are still now like picking up staff and seeing stuff like that I probably had a conversation with them, right? And it's just good to see, because now doing what I do on social media, I make a lot of reconnections as well,
Yeah.
with Marines that are, picking up the rank that I retired at or getting close to it. And last time I seen them or I had them, underneath my charge was, when they were E5s and E6s. And I'm just like, yeah, I knew it. Or you helped get them through a tough time, like an
Yeah.
NJP, non office hours, or, maybe they had a DUI and they were salvageable by the CG, right? And then you get to see them years later and you get to reconnect. It's a real good feeling, man. You guys know. I know you have some as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So your drill duty was 2 years, 3 years?
They're typically 3-year duty stations. Yeah,
Okay.
you can extend some, and then there's some other extenuating circumstances, but it's pretty rare. Standard is 3.
Yeah. And then you were headed out to Hawaii.
Yes. Yep.
Was that an assignment you chose, or is that just where the needs of the Corps were?
So I would have went to Hawaii straight out of boot camp had to let me because I seen a couple get orders here and there, and I was like, what? You know, like I said, I'm 20 at the time. I got a new bride. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'd love to. So I actually, it's just like any other organization or network. If if you're a good asset to the organization, people are going to take care of you, right? And then you in turn do that on the flip side when you're able to. So I had a first arm that wasn't even mine on the drill field, and I expressed a desire to go to Hawaii, and he ended up, helping me get orders to there, and so it was, you know, I pretty much had a good idea of how I wanted to do my career, and that's why every duty station except for Paris Island was a different one, and it was different types of duties and working with different, like some of the special operations commands and the training and education commands, um, and it was just making the right moves, but putting that trust in those good leaders, and then learning along the way. So
I assume that it's the same way. But as drill sergeants in the Army, when you leave that drill field and then you go back to a rotational unit, yes, some things have changed as far as equipment, maybe some standards and practices have changed, but then there's also a dramatic shift in the mindset, going from that rigid, structured environment of of being a drill sergeant or a drill instructor to a a somewhat looser environment with a different set of standards. How how was that adjustment for you coming off of your 3 years uh, as an instructor to back to a rotational unit?
So that's a very good question because that's something that I know a lot of Marines, doesn't matter if you're coming from recruiting or anything else. For me, going back to the infantry during the time of combat, it was a very good asset. Now, there was two things that one, I had to make sure that I was humble, like I was saying before, right? But what the Marine Corps is really good about, either your prior duty station or the next one, they will send you to some type of PME. Now, in my case, right before I left the drill field, I was fortunate enough to be the third battalion drill master for about 10 months. And then as I was transitioning out, I had a real close relationship with the battalion CO and sergeant major because, I was one of one in that battalion. So I was fortunate enough to be able to just, do those things and make the right moves. But so they sent me to my more administrative, like rank school, like staff NCO academy. It basically had to be a platoon sergeant, but on the administrative side. Well, when I got to Hawaii, there was a little bit of period of time, only a couple months though, that they'd come out with a revamp. It used to be called the platoon sergeant's course, but they changed it to infantry unit leader course. And I was in like the second or third class, I think it was. And this was like 2006. Um, and when I went to there, they got me spun up on all the tactical stuff. And then I had the, rigid but humble and personable, I guess charisma, if you want to call it, um, for the Marines to be like, okay, he's serious, but at the same time, like he's a real dude. So that whole mentality of them not wanting to disappoint me and things like that. And it was the same way through my career. Marines always knew, like, hey, don't make him turn green. You know what I mean? Like, and
Hulk
because
out.
yeah, because I could, right? Especially coming from the drill field, but I didn't want to yell no more. You know what I mean? You can almost ask every single drill instructor when they leave from there, like, look, last thing I want to do is have to yell. So if you're going to be a good leader, that's not the way you're going to be able to do it out in the fleet, right? There's times and all that other stuff where that more authoritarian type of leadership is used, but the democratic combination of both democratic and authoritarian is what I found for me the best way to go, with some humility in there. So that way, because again, if it was an acronym that I didn't know, I asked for the ones that I knew there. And this is even as an E6, a
Same.
staff. Yeah. But see, they appreciated that, and they'd be
Yeah.
like, Staff Sergeant, look what we," and I'd be like, "Hey, that's what I'm talking about." You know what I mean? Like trying to impress me and didn't want to disappoint me, so I really never had to yell, and I didn't want to.
Yeah.
But they knew that I could if I needed to. And but going into the combat type of time frame that was, you know, it was a very good asset to have the leadership skills. I mean, think about it. You got a sergeant at recruit training that can have an 80, 90 man platoon, right? And then you go be a staff sergeant and you might have, you know, 20 something, somewhere around in there, right? Three squads of 13, so about 30 something, yeah, low 30s. That's a piece of cake, but not really because you can't control them as much, right? And then it depends on what MOS you go back to, Air Wing's a little bit different culture, things like that. So you just got to base it on where you're going back to. And I always used to tell the drill instructors later on, the hat or the hat or the title drill instructor doesn't make you a drill instructor. I said they're just teaching you how to be a good leader and be really good at drill and be able to force the standards. So don't come in here trying to act like a drill instructor. All you are is sergeant whatever that is a drill instructor. That's like a part of you. It is not you. And that mindset really resonates well, because I can tell, or probably not now, but I could always tell if a drill instructor, especially if even if they were in another battalion, I'd be like, I see you over there acting. We're not giving out Oscars here. You know what I mean? Be like, be yourself, because you are going to run out of fuel if you don't, because you're trying to be something you're not. Um, but yeah, and I guess long story short, since I was going back to the infantry, it was during the combat time frame. Just those little things that I adjusted, in humility and asking the questions, even of the junior Marines, being personable, with a little sprinkle of charisma in there. Um, the discipline and the standard part, they always knew, like don't push it, you know. But yeah, it worked well for me.
So this is 2004, 2005 when you get to Hawaii?
Oh, when I went to Hawaii, no, 2006 when I went to Hawaii.
2006. And how long were you there before you deployed the first time?
Well, I was only there like a month or two before I went right back to North Carolina from Hawaii to go to the infantry unit leader course because we knew that we were going soon. And I was basically an untrained platoon sergeant, right? Nowadays, you don't get that MOS number until you go through that school. At the time, as soon as you got promoted, it was automatic. So, like the standard was, hey, you're an infantry staff sergeant, right? You should know all these things. When you come back from a duty that is, completely different, even your peer staff sergeants that were their last one, you know, it's like night and day. You can see it, right? Um, so yeah, 2006 is when I got there, and I wasn't actually on island very much with training and deployments because there was very small dwell time during that time period as well.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, 'cause, it was like 7 out, 6 back, but out of that six, 60 days of it was roughly leave on the front and back side, give or take. And then you're flying to the big island to do training, and then you got to fly to California to do, desert training out there at 29 Palms. Next thing you know, you get two deployments in so fast. I was only there 2.5 years, and the typical time is somewhere between 3 and 4 of any duty station. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was only actually on island probably me about six months out of that. And I had a young wife and my daughter at the time, which she's now 21. She was like 4 or 5, somewhere around in there. Yeah. So yeah, 3, 4, because she was born in 2004. So
So
Tell us more about your first deployment. You said earlier it was a lot of dismounted operations in a pretty urban setting.
Yeah, so we were set right in the middle of Hocklandia, Iraq, um, right off of the, I think it's the Euphrates on that side, for pretty much. So we had a company kind of reinforced a little bit. When I say reinforced, I just mean like we had some 50 cows and them, Mark 19s and stuff. But um, it was all organic to a company size, which is roughly about 180. So um, we all had berthings that were, ISO containers and things like that. You always got to run your security patrols and everything. But it was, it was just basically like every rotation. I think we do like a week. We started out two, and then it'd get a little long, so we cut it down where you do rotations like vehicle and entry point operations, but you'd stay out there in small HESCO, probably about the size of the inside part of a baseball diamond. You know what I mean? With HESCOs and traffic, some foot traffic, some vehicle traffic. Um, and then we had some on local security patrols, and we had some that was providing fob security. The local security patrol one was the best one basically for the Marines because they had their patrol schedule. They knew when they're going to have some downtime and stuff like that. We started to get females for the first time on that one, and that caused a little bit of logistical because they couldn't stay out at the checkpoints. But that's what we needed them was for the females or at the gate of the fob, possibly. And then we were taking them out on local security patrols. If it was just for like questioning and
Yep.
various things like that. But it was that it's funny because um, out of all my combat deployments, me personally, underneath my scope of responsibility, I never lost any Marines in combat. Right, my units did, the neighboring platoons did, and things like that. But the way that I trained my Marines was basically just like, look, don't show it. We ain't got time for none of that. We here for business. We don't need a lot of stuff in our pockets when we're on patrols, that type of thing. Um, so let's see. And that was in Hocklandia. And we'd go back and forth to the Haditha Dam because that's where battalion was at every once in a while. But we had two little satellite cops as well that were like platoon size.
Yeah. Combat outposts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was wag bag days, burn barrel,
Oh yeah.
all that stuff. I remember making, I still got some pictures too. I remember making like little stone grills and taking like the HESCO wire, putting it on top, um, burning it. And as people would come through, you could kind of barter with them if they had like goods going back and forth to market or whatever. They don't care. They're getting hooked up as well. Right. So, we'd have potatoes sometimes. We lived in those HESCOs out there with the sandbag roofs, with the
Good
cots.
times.
Yeah.
And you would have been out there during the surge then. This would have late 06, early 07. Is that?
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
we bumped up in numbers too.
Yep.
I think we went to 300K as a service.
Yep. Good times. I
And
was down south.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, and this time frame too, uh, we got there right after the Haditha massacre.
Yep.
I
was gonna
mean,
ask.
that for us,
Yep.
dude. Like I said, Lord was with us, or however you want to look at it, because we had a lot of Purple Hearts, things like that, but like actual casualties, my immediate unit didn't. But I mean, they left it a mess. They left it a mess for us. I mean, nobody liked us. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. Okay. Wild times.
Mm-hmm. Builds character, though.
So you were pretty much running security operations throughout that deployment.
That, and we do things like cordon knocks, cordon search, bolos, um, just basically maintaining and getting the the bad guys out of where we were at in the little cities, and because they were all like little suburbs, I guess you could call it, of Haditha.
Yeah.
So
So, how did that first deployment prepare you for the second time in Iraq?
oh, it was like night and day. Other than second time, we all had vehicles, so they were all vehicle mounted patrols, and we had all organic to a rifle company. Just your 0311s. We didn't have any big weapons company guys, but we had big weapons. So like we had to do a lot of cross training, uh, make our own internal QRF. So that was the biggest difference. One was on foot, and then one was in vehicles. And you gentlemen probably know, like I wouldn't have to want to pick either one of those, to be honest with you. Especially not during that time frame. Um,
Yeah.
but we didn't have any like. I think they assigned us to the company maybe like one mech, actual like motor T mech. And then Marines we were having to figure out how to fix stuff, and um,
Oh, come on! I'm sure you had at least one or two good boys in there that knew how to work on their cars and could figure things out.
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because let's see, was it? But see, you'd think about it, maybe so, but think about where the duty station is out of Hawaii. You know what I mean? Say if we were a Lejeune based or somewhere over on the East Coast, or especially down towards the South, like you might get a lot more of that. I mean, I had Marines that were actually from, they were like Polynesian, you
Hmm.
know, like we go out in the field, he could climb the tree, grab the bananas, bring them down. We're like, yeah. Um, so, but yeah, I mean, it was just basically, you guys know, figuring out, how to make things work. And you got all these new gadgets that they're trying to break out. Like I remember they gave us one of those like robots for the first time where you could see it, and we'd put it in the truck and, try to use it, and with really no training on it whatsoever.
Get it
Um,
blown up.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was just a lot. I mean, it was, not the beginning, but it was still, things they just weren't figured out. I remember when I think it was my first combat action ribbon. They hadn't even like hashed out all the requirements for a combat action ribbon for the Marines, and an IED. Like since it was really relatively new, it wasn't in any of the it was
Yeah.
hard for somebody to justify that, right? So
And
you had
the
to put like
policy didn't have it.
pictures and distance and like all this other stuff. Um, and I distinctly remember because me and my platoon commander, because I was a staff sergeant, and on a patrol we had an IED go off on a dismounted patrol. Um, Luckily, no fatalities, but we'd have a little bit of casualties. But we were trying to figure out, and we were remote battalions over here. There's a time frame, and it's just like, okay, so I guess we just keep writing and putting pictures, and because I remember we fought with that one more so for the Marines that were on that patrol for probably 9, 10 months to get them that award. We were getting ready to go back again before they before they got approved for.
Before we take a break, real quick, one last question about that. How long did it take for those policies and procedures to sort of change or catch up with the times?
It didn't take a very long time because they'd already had it in the works, but then it was just like, hey, it wasn't specific guidance other than just be as specific as possible. Like,
Right.
hey, let's go.
It wasn't refined yet.
No, it wasn't refined yet. And then also the original, like, because if I remember correctly, one of the original criteria for combat action, or at least for us, was like fire upon, fire back, right? But during those time frames, like a bomb goes off, like, who are you just going to start shooting? No,
Yeah.
so some of that criteria had to get updated and changed with the times. Um, and we were like right there in the middle of it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, People were getting combat action ribbons for being on, I guess, what was it? We used to call it Camp Cupcake, but what's the big base in Iraq there? Al Assad. Yeah, Al Assad. Um, oh, dude, I got to go back to see Al Assad um, when I went. I was doing Operation Inherent Resolve, so I was in Kuwait, went over to Jordan, and then we had they went into I don't know if it was the SEALs or if it was MARSOC or combination thereof, but they went into the middle of where Al Assad used to be and slowly started boom. And then we went out there and relieved them. And then that company of Marines, which was mostly weapons company, started reestablishing. Dude, it was just like, really? Really? We gave all this, and this is what we get. You know what I mean? And it was just, and I was telling Marines that, and they were like, "You were here?" I was like, "Yes." I was like, "There used to be this right there." You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. So that was interesting to see.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and take a break real quick, and then we'll be back.
All right, everyone, we're back. So we had just finished talking about, or had we, your first combat deployment, and then we were kind of starting to talk about your second one. So tell us about your mounted patrol deployment.
Yeah. So that one, which was crazy, was actually um, I didn't look forward to it. You know what I mean? Like the first one, you're like, yay, like game day, and then after that, I was like, okay, so we're going from foot, which actually, if you think like being mainly foot patrols, you think, oh, geez, I'd much rather be in a vehicle than on foot. Be like, not during those times. You know what I'm saying?
No.
So, I mean, it's a lot harder to see around you. You obviously have to be less observant because you're moving, that type of thing. And we had a lot of just regular O3s that we had, or driving bigger trucks, Humvees, all these things. We'd send them to school, but they were like that, you know, and then cross training everybody on the bigger weapons, the Mark 19s, the 50 cals, you know, turret gunners, because we were what they call a rifle company. We weren't a weapons company. We had the 60 mortars and, the smaller guns and things like that.
Yeah.
240 Golf and 240 Bravo. So we had to get all these Marines trained, right? And we only had probably only a few like 31s and 41s, and then we were doing a lot of handheld mortaring, right? Which
Mortar. Yep.
that's not something you practice all the time, right? But so the mortarman goes from, he's got a base plate, he's got the tube, who's got the ammo. Oh, everybody's got some ammo. Same
Everybody's got the
thing.
ammo. Yeah.
Yeah, especially 60 millimeter mortars, right? So, um, and I got to do more of that later on as a first sergeant, which is pretty cool. Um, but just and then you have your new dump of new Marines that never deployed. You've got your small number of ones that made the last deployment with you. But the good thing about this for me is it was my second almost back to back deployment to Iraq, and I was a staff sergeant, right? And so for me it was like, all right, now I know what needs to be done and all that other stuff, especially the newer ones and things like that. But I mean, for me, that was the major difference. One being on foot, one being in vehicles, but then having to be quick and get everybody trained on what they need to be trained on. And by the way, when we cross train you for that, you also need to be cross trained for this and this too. Because we don't have vehicles organic to a rifle company. And you got one mech, but they're not going to give you all the motor T drivers for the battalion because obviously battalion got to still run operations.
Yeah.
So that was probably the biggest thing is in no time, because it was just so quick.
How much turnover was there between the two deployments? I mean, obviously, there's guys that get out. There are guys that change duty stations. There are guys that get promoted and go off to other assignments. How much turnover was there between the two deployments?
So if I remember correctly, roughly at my platoon level, and I was privy to a little bit of company. It's usually about, I'd say a turnaround, you lose about almost 50%. I would say it may be even a lot higher than that. And the reason is some reenlist and stay in and go somewhere else, because they did their two deployments. Some do their two deployments and get out. You know what I mean? So like you've got two on that side, but you only have a certain number that come back in, right? So I remember, I can't remember if it was my first one or second one. It might have been my second deployment. I literally went and deployed and had no NCOs. I had E3s and below, and I had like 30 of them and me. So, but by the time that we came back, um, my squad leaders were all NCOs. I even had one Lance Corporal that got filled, meritoriously promoted by the CG that was on deck because we just happened to be. We'd come back from a vehicle patrol. We were on the fob, and I'm the staff sergeant. I'm in the company office, right? And next thing you know, first sergeant comes in and be like, "Hey, we got a Marine that meets this criteria and all this other stuff." The CG wants to field promote somebody meritoriously. I was like, "Oh, that's cool." So I had this Lance Corporal that was a mortarman by trade, but he was acting as one of my 0311 squad leaders, right? And his MOS had been closed for promotion for God knows how long. And he had done all of his PME and all this stuff. And no, he was a corporal at the time. Yeah, he was a corporal. So first sergeant said, "Hey, print up a dummy warrant, blah, blah, blah. I'll get a hold of Sergeant Major, tell him come on by here." And it was one of the coolest things I got to do because you hear about it, um, even if it's happening to you or not. And they were back there PM the vehicles because we just got back, and I said, "All right, get everybody in formation, just whoever's here." Right. I had one other sergeant at the time, and he was a careerist, so but he had come from another duty station, so But anyway, I told him what was going on, and he was like, "Yeah, that'd be awesome for Pace," because his name was Pace, last name was Pace. And I said, "I need your chevrons." So I took the chevrons off of the sergeant, and I said, "Don't worry, I'll get you some more." Right. And I put them all in formation and called them to attention, and then I just go um, Corporal Pace front and center, like just out of nowhere. So he just does what a Marine does, right? Comes up there, stands, faces, because he had awards and been promoted before, so he knows the rough of it. And then once I got him there, about face, our major stood in front of me. He was like, "You know what this is for?" And he was like, "No." He was like, "Congratulations, you're getting promoted by the CG right now." Um, so, I mean, after that, I had to send like verification as PME was done and all that other stuff. But it was probably the coolest. One of the
Yeah.
coolest things I got to do, even as a junior Marine myself, staff sergeant for one of the Marines that just due to circumstances just could not get promoted because there was just no availability. So
Yeah. That's a great story.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
You return from your second deployment back to Hawaii. What happens next?
let's see. So that was a combat and infantry deployment. So I went to I went to Florida, Daytona Beach. Um, I just got promoted to gunny, um, combat promotion, not meritorious, but it's combat promotion in Iraq. And then I think it was like 3 months later. It was probably like a month or two before the end of the deployment. And then I had orders to be the assistant Marine officer instructor, or the AMOI, at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. Um, and again, like I kind of heard about that duty station through the grapevine, did my own research and everything else because I had to submit a package, and so there was a lot of that foresight in that. And after that, though, it was not what I knew; it was who I knew that got me to the school that I actually wanted to go to. So a little bit of combination um, there, and it's just leaders that they saw me coming up too, and they were still in the Corps, and they were doing like any good Marine leader would do, be like, hey, let's take care of this Marine. And again, another reason why I ended up staying in the whole time that I did. Um, and then I did that duty station for 3 years. So it's not a B billet. It's called an independent duty, kind of like recruiting, but you don't have to recruit anybody. So we were training the officers and the midshipmen, what we call them. But right there at Embry-Riddle, they've got a huge Army
The
ROTC
ROTC
there.
program.
And then the one for the Air Force there is the second largest behind the Academy. So that was basically my first taste of like joint service um, operations, and I was a gunnery sergeant in E7 at the time.
In that position, were you able to, attend some classes there at the school?
I was already enrolled in um, American Military University because I did a little bit of college before I came in, and then actually it was when I was a staff sergeant before I went on my first combat deployment. I was in IULC. One of the other staff sergeants that went with me turned me on to using tuition assistance and all that other stuff, and I was like, huh. So I started to go back to school there. Now I could have went at that particular school since I was staff. They consider you staff there. I
Yeah.
could have went to school there for free. Actually, my kids could have went there because I was a staff, but they were not even close to college. They weren't even high school age at the time. So, um, but we taught
Slackers.
the captain and I. We taught accredited naval science course classes, but they were all within the confines of the ROTC. And our main job there was the Marine option midshipmen to get them ready to go to OCS, successfully complete OCS, and then get a commission um, once they graduate. Right, boom, do that ceremony, that graduation day. And that's when they do the first salute and all that other stuff. So I got exposure to that, but a precursor to be able to get that duty station was being a drill instructor. Right, you have to be a drill instructor before that because the summer when you don't have the midshipmen, they go off and do training, and then as an AMY instructor, they'll send you to um, either OCS to augment there during the summertime with the permanent personnel, or there's small opportunities in Bridgeport, California, and then they have something what's called Corchermid, which is for us was over at Lejeune, but it's the summer between their freshman and sophomore year because they have to obligate or they have to get picked up on full scholarship going into their 10th grade year. If not, then they get dropped and they have to go, the other mechanisms to get commission that are out there.
Okay, so you did that for 3 years. You
Hmm.
picked up gunny right before you took on that role. So
Yep.
I presume you go back to a line unit after this.
Yeah, and then that's where I went to 29 Palms out in California. So I go from Florida to 29 Palms, California, out in the desert.
Oh, you Marines have all the
Um,
fun.
and then I was out there with 3-7, one of the best and hardest units in the Marine Corps because they live out there in the desert, right? Like just imagine training in that just to go to the field, right? Because they send units
Yes, I
there
can imagine.
pre-deployment. Yeah, they say it's a pre-deployment requirement, but the Marines that are stationed out there, that's all their training area is. So like, um, and I got there. I want to say August, September, and then the board had let out, and I got selected for first sergeant. And I knew the sergeant major. He was one of my mentors from the drill field prior. Part of the reason helped get me to that specific unit. Again, we go to that, like not what you know, it's who you know. And they had just gotten back from a deployment. So I ended up being at 29 Palms, probably my longest duty station. I want to say like it was probably a little over 4 years because of the dwell time and all that other stuff. And then that's where I did my um, Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. And after that, the next one after that was for me personally, because I went to headquarters as the first sergeant of headquarters and service company. So I was mainly in Kuwait, but that's where I went to Jordan. I went to, some other places where we had Marines at. Um, so that one was kind of a combat deployment, but like, not directly for me. But the first one at 3-7, when I was with the first sergeant, I was with a rifle company. That was almost like having a platoon again.
You said that was Afghanistan.
Yes.
So what year and what location?
I want to say it was around the 2010, 2011, 2012 time frame because
Okay.
we demilled Shergazi and Musa Kayla there. So we closed those places down,
Yeah.
which was some sucky times, as you can imagine. That process is not an overnight process, but you're still there, and you have less assets and accommodations and all that other stuff.
More with less.
We went back to Bastion. My company did, and we flip flopped with another company that closed down Shergazi, um, and we were running either uh, short range or long range missions out of Bastion. And then we also had a company that was doing the QRF, so they'd be stationed up there with kind of like a not obviously the Red Room, but like right there close. They had berthing and stuff close to the flight line, and it depended on if they were using an Osprey or a 53, but they were the quick reaction force. So remember before when I told you in Iraq, like we had in the company fob, we had platoons that, some security patrols, some on fob security, and whatnot. Well, now at this level, if you're looking at it at the battalion level, because I'm a first sergeant at this time, so I go to all the battalion meetings and everything else. Our company broke down, went back to Bastion. The other company broke down Shergazi, went back to Bastion, and then we started. And then another company, I forget where they were at. They were more on a mountaintop type of fob. They closed that one down, and so we rotated between um, Camp Leatherneck, one company doing things over in Camp Leatherneck, and then the other two companies running far and like 50 clicks or in or 50 clicks and out. So one airborne or one vehicle where you stay out for like 3 or 4 days, come back, or you get on the good detail where you go out and do those long range patrols and you'll be back by chow time because you're on a helo.
Explain for the audience what are some of the things that go into breaking down these outposts. I mean, you're not just showing up with a bulldozer and just bulldozing over everything, and that's that done and dusted. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, so obviously once the order comes down, the first thing you have to do is everything has to get scrubbed, right? So they'll send like especially then when data was starting to come up and satellite stuff and everything else, they bring train people and those MOSs in to sanitize all that, and then you go down to base operations with like long whip antennas that you can take with you and things like that. So it gets pretty crude there towards the end. I remember they came and took all the gym equipment that we scrounged up here and there, and they left us a bunch of TRXs and said, "Here, there you go. There's your gym." And then you just slowly kind of peel out. But anything that's not like military necessity, you just kind of leave in place, because there's a lot of structure there. And then the locals they'll start to accommodate that, and they'll actually use it. But you just got to make sure that anything that has to do with anything, I don't care if it's paper, digital, whatever, it has to do with national security, like operations, timelines, any of that stuff. You guys know that. They bring in the ones that do that specifically to do that, and then you provide Marines that help them do that. Um, and then they got to start packing and all that other stuff. And then what you do is you start collapsing it in a little bit until finally there's only like 4 or 5 vehicles that are holding security. They're already packed up, living out of their trucks, and then we're like, all right, here we go. Break down the patrols. 3 or 4 vehicle patrols, so kind of slowly. So when you're one of the last ones in, I mean, especially if it takes like a month or so to do that, month and a half, like you're one of the last ones pulling out in the truck. You've been living off MREs for God knows how long, and you know, ain't really bathed and even longer than that. Um, but I mean, there's always Marines out there be like, yeah, I'll be one of the last ones out. You know what I mean? Like that was never an issue, but it's as a leader, especially at the E8 level, when you got about, especially reinforced, about 200 so Marines, like the accountability piece when you're doing something like that is like you got to put some trust in some people, you know. And I'll never forget. I think I did. Was it as a first sergeant? It might have been as a first sergeant. I went back to Bridgeport, where I was a gunny. Yeah, I was a gunny. I went back to Bridgeport, and we were doing like the helo extractions, and then go somewhere else, Mako gate, accountability, all that other stuff. And I remember we did it one time, and you got instructors up there, right? And they throw scenarios in and all this other stuff, and you just got to adapt to it. Um, and the CO was like, "First sergeant, we got everybody." I was like, "I don't know where this one is. I don't know. I have not seen him." Right? We're looking around, all this other shit, and finally he was like, "He must have already gone." I was just like, "All right," but I'm telling you, right? So when we get over to that other LZ, um, hey, first sergeant, got everybody. I'm like, "Look, we're going around doing another count over here. I'm checking with the squad, the all the platoon sergeants and everything." I said, "But I didn't physically see this guy." And I tried to tell the CO. They had so they had threw that scenario in there. They had actually snatched him up beforehand. So it was really an evaluation of, do you know or not, right? Um, so I was always a stickler for accountability. Like the worst thing that underneath my charge, or say for example, Marines late formation or something like that, my all first instinct was always, are they okay? Has anybody talked to them? Or are they in a ditch somewhere? Right? Now, if they just missed it or gaffed it up, be like, okay, there's repercussions. That's fine. But that was one thing that was kind of unique to me. I don't know. Like I still do that. If I don't hear from somebody from a little while, whatever, I'm not going to assume that they're just doing it out of whatever.
You said that you were at 29 Palms for about 5 years, and that was probably the longest that you'd been. That was the longest time you'd ever had at a duty station.
Correct.
Why was it that you were there so much longer than, because you only did two and a half in Hawaii. You did 3 years as a DI, and then you did 3 years at Embry-Riddle. Why were you at 29 Palms for so much longer?
So that's a good question. I know three instances in my career of why that actually evened out. Because think about it, I did 21 years and 2 months, 7 duty stations. So it averages out 3 years per duty station. Um, the first one really was, remember I told you before I even hit my first 4 years, I'd already graduated DI school. Well, typically your first duty station is your longest because it's going to be closer to 4 years. And then the rest of them, you're considered a careerist. It's going to be closer to that 3 year mark due to the rotation. But I got out of there early just by a little bit, right? I don't know, 6 months, whatever the case may be. And then the other one that kind of helped even that out was when I got to 29 Palms and I was there for so long. Remember, I mentioned they had just got back from deployment. I had just found out that I got selected to first sergeant, right? So, like 2 months later, I actually got the option to be like, look, since you're picking up first sergeant, we can either, because good friend of mine and still was the sergeant major at the time. Be like, look, we'll give you two options here. You can We can pin you on. You can get promoted and stay here. But they just got back from deployment, which means it's almost like I went on that deployment. So they're going to have their 2-to-1 ratio deployment, you know, 2-to-1 ratio, and then another deployment, and then you can leave, right? Because you got to get in at least 2 duty stations. And I said, I just got here. I said, I don't want to move again. I said, so yeah, right, I'll take it. So I just moved because I was only a gunny there for like 2 or 3 months, but they were actually still trickling back when I got there. So I was, the new kid on the block when it came to staff NCO. So I was only in that one company. I think it was India company, maybe Lima, for a couple months as gunny, and then I moved to India company as the first sergeant. And then they started because we hadn't even got our new Marines yet, so the whole cycle started there. But I had gotten there before that. So
So it was just the way that the cards kind of played out.
yeah. And like I said, I mean, if you look at it over the whole 21 years, it averages out to 3 years of duty station. But there was a couple of snafus in there with timing. But other than that,
Yeah, yeah. Timing, and then the requirements of the Marine Corps and stuff like
yeah,
that.
and what rank you are, and all that thing, it all plays in factor.
So when that 5 years was up, were you ready to get out of there since it had been the longest that you'd been anywhere? Plus, you're in
You've
the
been
desert.
institutionalized.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because like I said, I did those 2 deployments over there. First one was a combat deployment as a first sergeant, and then the second, after that, I was kind of like, all right, I've been I've been getting shot at, and worried about IEDs for long enough, right? So, but I did what with my duty stations. I had um, what they call fleet time followed by a B billet, fleet time followed by so going back and forth to my regular job um, every other duty station. And ironically enough, that's when you can kind of plan. So my first what they call non-deployable duty station is when my daughter was conceived, and then go to Hawaii, come back, and then I got another 3 years in Orlando, and then that's where my son was conceived. So, like I told you before, when I look back, I actually planned everything pretty dadgum good, and I got to do pretty much everything that I wanted to do while I was in the Corps. Um, what is one thing? I don't know. No, I think I pretty much did what I got some cool experiences along the way.
So where did you head after 29 Palms? Somewhere with a little more grass and a little less sand.
Well, still the same, oh, not the same amount of sand, but I actually ended up going back to Florida and getting stationed in Orlando. So again, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, actually, it's part of what you know, but a little bit more important of who you know, especially when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I'm a first sergeant, and I had got my second combat action ribbon as a first sergeant, combat fit reps and things like that. So like all I really had to do was just be like, hey, I'd like to go here. Well, it's available. Okay. And again, for there's certain time frames that those duty stations are open, and they go like, because if somebody gets in that one seat, it's filled for 3 years. So like you got to look at the list before and start kind of timing it out. And
Time it. Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to Florida. I knew that because that's where I was originally born at anyway. And I liked it being stationed here before on AMOI duty. And so that was where I was able to be a part of overall of 4th MLG, Marine Logistic Group, which is the reservists. So 4th Marines, 4th Marine Division is, so their small cadre. And we had Army there too. It was actually an Army building. And us and the Navy were stowed away on the second floor because obviously our numbers weren't nearly as big. And again, another opportunity outside of combat scenario to work with other services.
So at this point, you're closing in on 20. At at what point did you start getting that feeling like, you know, I think it's about time to hang it up?
Actually, not until the very end.
Oh, okay.
And the reason on that one was is once you hit 20, you finally like have some chess pieces in your corner, right? Because I'd actually re-enlisted, and I cut my last one short once I'm at um, the big three, retirement scenario. But it was only because and when you get to that level at E9, and your monitors, your placers, or what like that, you're essentially peers. You're just in a different job, and they're going to tell you one thing and kind of drag you along, right? And the next thing you know, you're like, nope, not doing that. You're going here and here, right? And I was like, literally that day, I was like, well, I guess that's it. You know, I can pull chalks, and I'd already, I had at that time, I'd already graduated college, and knew what I wanted to do and things like that. So, but it wasn't until the very end.
But you got picked up for sergeant major while you were in Orlando.
Yeah, I got selected while I was there, but I did almost a full time. Actually, I did pretty much all the full time. Um, what I actually did was is once you're the list comes out and it's got the numbers on there, you know you can after the first few you can kind of start to figure out when your promotion month's going to be based
Yeah,
off
yeah, yeah.
deductive reasoning, right?
With
And
some assumptions, yes.
and so again, I was going back to Paris Island because I knew people, and I was like, dude, I need to go back there. Like, it's been years. I would love to go back there. Um, so they knew I was coming. So I actually went there early and got pinned on as Sergeant Major, went back. And then my last 2 or 3 months in Orlando, I was a Sergeant Major. And it was pretty neat because, the guy that I deal with is in another state, and he's also a sergeant major. So now at this point, I'm kind of like, all right, make it a little bit easier just before I get out of here. But typically, they do that right before you move, obviously, frock or whatever the case may be. Um, but it was, yeah, I did almost complete 3 years at AMY duty before I got selected and then moved February of 18. Yeah, February of 18.
So your last rodeo is where it all started.
Yeah, for us, once you pick up yeah, for us, once you pick up EA, your duty stations can actually be down to 2 years because there's less of you,
Yeah,
more requirements, that type of thing. So I
yeah.
did
Army's
from
like that too. Yeah.
yeah AMOI duty there as the first sergeant. I did from 16 to 18.
So when you decided that it was time to get out, did you already know what you were going to do? I mean, you'd said that you'd already finished school and stuff. Did you already know what your plan was post retirement?
I knew what I was going to do, and I had an idea of sliding into the civilian sector, but I had an expectation of where I need to slide into that when it comes to the civilian fitness industry, based on my background, experience, education, knowledge, all that other stuff. Um, but yeah, absolutely, fitness. Like, I mean, I never thought that I'd be where I'm at right now, but fitness, I knew I wanted to do that. And being retired, it's like, okay, trainer, I know they're not going to make a killing or whatever, but as long as I'm still enjoying what I'm doing and I'm being retired, then, I'm down for it. So I didn't take the typical HR or project management route as most of my peers are set up for,
How cliche.
or selling
Consulting.
insurance consultant. But see, I'm a consultant too in a certain aspect, but yeah,
Yeah.
you can consult. It's kind of like an empanada, dude. You can consult anything.
Now you're making me hungry. So what was it about health? I mean, you were an athlete back in your youth. Uh, was that was health and fitness something that had always interested you going back that far, or was it something that maybe sort of slowly evolved an interest in you during your time in service? What was it?
It was kind of a hybrid of both. In the beginning, I played sports because I was short and I was a smaller guy. Get to know people, become a jock, I mean that type of thing. But then, again, coming up with that good strong work ethic from my grandparents, I appreciated the coaching and all that other stuff. So it started out initially as being fit, popular, you know what I mean, looking good with your shirt off, that being good at sports, that type of thing. And it
So
really
handsome.
wasn't, yeah. And even going into the Marine Corps, um, is, I really consider that at 20 when I really started like training myself, right? But still the typical, the health part wasn't even an issue. It probably wasn't until I had my first major injury as a gunner sergeant on AMY duty. I tore my right distal bicep tendon. I ruptured it and had to get it surgically repaired. And then that rehab process and, me getting my full range of motion back or whatever, I started paying. I was like, you know what? I got to get smarter on this. Um, and I was already in school, but I was kind of doing class here, class there, that type of thing. And I was like, you know what? This is what I'm going to do because my degree is in sports and health sciences and concentration in athletic performance. I'm like, I know why am I doing this, right? But I wasn't doing the proper recovery. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. So first major injury around 32. And then I had another major injury about 5 years later. And again, by that point, I knew what to do. Went to go see the doc, PT, all that other stuff, but I do the PT on my own. Um, so I've actually ruptured both of these bicep tendons. And that's what led me to, why I specialize now in corrective exercise and senior fitness because we're all going to be seniors, right? So,
God
um,
willing. Yeah.
yeah, so the health part for me didn't come until it was basically force fed in my early 30s because it was always, especially as a Marine, just hey, just go. Right? We'll figure it out later.
How did you, 5 years apart, rupture both of your biceps?
So the first one I did, I was flipping big tires, and um, I'd let myself go a little bit and got fatigued and got lazy. And one time I went to go up, it started to come back on me. Instead of just dropping it, I tried to catch it. So that did the first one, right? And I was right handed. So as you can imagine, that's probably a little bit more right handed dominant without even thinking about it. And then the second one was not even the night of the Marine Corps ball, but I think it was the next night. Um, I went to a country bar with my at the time wife, and Marines were there, and having a good time. They wanted me to ride the mechanical bull, and I was like, no, 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 I'm not doing
Ah,
that.
the Widowmaker.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we were just sitting there. I wouldn't even drink it because we had the ball the night before. We were just chilling before the next day when we flew out, and I got up on the bull finally because I gave in to peer pressure, I guess. But I knew that I had injured this right arm before, right? So I'm right-handed, but I get in there with my left one, right, instead. And I would say probably about halfway through it, I felt it. I knew exactly what had happened, right? So all I could do was just curl in on it and try to hug it until it stopped because I didn't know if my hand was going to come out of there, flop around, do more damage. So I wrote it out, right? But halfway through it, I felt it turn white and everything else. I went back to the table and I said, I did it again. Like, what do you mean? I was like, I tore the other bicep tendon. No. How do you know? Be like, trust me, I know. Um, and then at the same time, I actually um, did a second degree tear on my right groin. So I came back from the Vegas ball after the Marine Corps ball, but it wasn't even on a Marine Corps ball night with a grade 2 strained groin that bruised and then tore this and like went straight into 29 Palms ER that next day.
Joe, that is the most Marine story I've ever heard in my entire life.
So that's how I've torn. And the first one's not even nearly as cool, but the funny thing about it is the second one, I thought enough ahead, like, hey, I've previously injured this one, even though I'm right-handed. Let's go in there with that one, and I'm sure as I'll get up. It sure did, but it works out in the long run. Why? Because now my biceps are symmetrical. Before one was shorter than the other, so now everything matches up.
That is a glass half full story if I ever heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason, man.
So, what are some things that you have taken from the Marine Corps? Lessons learned from your time in service um, whether it's leadership, uh, training, whatever it may be, resilience, resolve, whatever that you have applied in your fitness work, or just in your life in general since retiring.
All of it, every single bit of it. The leadership, the professional military education schools, the duty stations, like being out with the local populace, especially when I'm a little bit further in my career. Daytona Beach, Orlando, like being to be personable, um, charismatic, because a good portion of what I do now is sales when it comes to training people. It doesn't matter if it's in person or online, right? So I was fortunate enough through my career to not get so far in the no grumpy vet type of mentality, because I had exposure to those things where basically in you're out in the local populace, how Marines will in their deltas, or whatever, basically looking like you're in a suit. You know what I mean? Because you're there professional conducting business. And when you're talking to civilians and you're still active duty and you're going through all these things, it really prepared me um, for what I do now. I just had to learn, especially out in the civilian sector, and even more so sometimes in the fitness industry, that those are not your comrades to your right and to your left. Now there are some, but for the you almost feel like you don't have that layer of protection, of your brothers and sisters in arms, or going through the
Yep.
same thing, and that type of thing. But I mean, all of it, dude. There's not one thing that I don't use today that I didn't learn in the Marine Corps. Um, the work ethic that I got, that was just the base foundation for my grandparents. That made it
Yep.
easier for me. But the solution based, like, okay, as long as I'm breathing, like there's got to be a way to get through this, just adversity. And when you're working with you know people that have always obviously been civilians and things like that, like you're really like you just want to stop sometimes and be like, but you're not getting shot at, like it's really not that bad, you know what I mean? Like, um, it blows my mind these days. And I've had my times, especially in the early years when I just retired and things like that, trying to figure out the VA and the whole thing, and of anxiousness and all that other stuff. But I found that's been a key for me, man, is just especially what I do now, keeping the stress level down.
Yep.
And I get to take all those skills, leadership, school experiences, and I get to give it to my clients now, right? And I feel like I got a unit. You know what I mean? I feel like I got, you know, Marines, or just people that depend on me again.
Yeah. What's that fraternity and purpose? Yeah.
Is your or I guess what percentage of your clientele now is either military or veteran?
About 98%.
Oh wow. Oh
About
wow.
ninety eight
Okay.
percent. Um, I trained some civilians online that obviously I met here and there, and then some that I trained in person when I was first retired and things like that. That I'm still their coach and program for them. But what I figured out with investing in things like business coaching and stuff like that for myself is, who are you trying to talk to? Who are you trying to convey a message to? And I'm sitting there, and he was like, I've got it, Joe. He goes, I go, what? He goes, you are who you're looking for, right? Because I've been retired for 5 years. Those first one, two, and the three, really within the past year or so, were some of the roughest I've had uh, ever. Going through a divorce, not seeing my kids as much, like a lot changed for me. Trying to get my VA where it needs to be, not knowing what to do, you know, that type of stuff. But now coming out on the back end, coupled with everything that I learned in the Marine Corps, it's just like, guess what? I've been there too. And then I'll be like, well, this injury, this, that, and I'll be like, hey, medical record that thick. Now you want to be serious? Like, do you want to improve your health and fitness? Um, Because if you're serious, then I'm serious. And if you're not serious, then there you go. But still, I like to call it empathetically firm. That makes sense. Um, Empathetically firm. Like I get it. I understand. Trust me, I've been there too. But now I'm not there. And here's how I did it. Right. And I'm
Yeah.
showing you how to do it. And I'm going to be with you along the way. Train, coach, mentor. Um, you can use all those descriptive terms for Marine leaders. Mine just happens to be focused more now on fitness, whereas a SAR major or a leader at any higher, especially executive level, where you know a lot about everything, but you don't know everything about one thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas now, all I do is health and fitness. You know,
Yeah.
and for me, that's finally like, whew, now I finally get to hone my skills in one particular area and really make a difference, rather than crossing some T's and dotting some I's. Because, another big thing when you have a team, or if you're at a higher level and you have Marines that are, like your admin Marines and, all that other stuff, when you retire, you don't have any of that. But your mentality is like, you can still do that, but then you can't. And then you start looking at yourself like, what happened? And then you just fall in the ways. You're like, I guess I'm just getting old. This is how it is, right? That's not the warrior
Yeah.
spirit. Where'd it go, right? I help people find that now, right? Because it also helps me because I get to teach, coach, and mentor still, even though I'm
Yeah.
not active duty Marine anymore.
Because you said that a portion of your business is online, or your portion of your clientele is done, online. And we talked about the importance of accountability. I got to imagine that that's kind of hard. It's easier to enforce accountability to people that you're coaching, teaching, mentoring, if you can actually be there for them in person versus doing something virtually. I mean, what can you do? You know, either either you're working for the program that we've designed for you specifically, or you're not.
Hmm.
You can't really hold anybody accountable that way, the same way that you could if they were physically present.
I'm laughing because what you do is you teach along the way, you fill people with knowledge, you get excited, and you inspire people. Have you ever heard of inspire? I know you've heard inspire people. So as a leader, you have to inspire the people that you expect to follow you or be with you, or whatever the scenario is. It's an ideal, it's a belief, right? It's spread
Yeah.
within the military all the time. And the main thing is like, what do you ultimately want? Did you feel like a warrior one time at the pinnacle of your life right now? Did you feel like a warrior? Did you feel like a Spartan? Did you feel like, whatever? Okay, guess what, dude? It's still in there. It's still in there. Dude or dudette, it doesn't matter. It's still in there. Actually, when I talk to people initially, and I do their consultation, there's a warrior in everybody. You just got to know their backstory a little bit. For the military side, it's a little bit easier, right? Because what I get 9 out of 10 times is like, I'll get a scenario from somebody be like, yeah, I don't feel confident enough in my abilities physically, and it's messing with me mentally because if somebody comes snatch my kid up right now and took off running because we're walking down the road, I don't think I could do very much. I wouldn't be able to catch him. I would, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just things like that. When you put real life scenarios, right? Because I want you to remember this quote, and you can quote me on it because I haven't heard it anywhere else. I train the life athlete. Life's a sport. You want to be good on it. You want to be good at it. Do you want to sit the bench either because you're injured or health stricken, or do you want to be out there and be good at it? Be a superstar at life. That means being out there on the field with your kids. That means even if they're your grandkids, don't let a 5-year old outrun you. You know what I mean? Um, and I started getting this mentality because I've trained in person for the first 3.5, going into 4 years. And the demographic of where I was starting to train at in the gym that I managed was mainly seniors, right? So I became a senior fitness specialist and a corrective exercise specialist, and I trained people in their 90s, right? Trained, ladies that are 85, 86 can still live by themselves, still can go on vacation, right? And have a good time. And that just led me to believe that the only fountain of youth we have is physical exercise, stress relief, like all the pillars that have to go with fitness, not just the physical, you know. So it's an idea, it's a belief system, and the only way you can do that is inspire people, because they don't even know the potential. Um, I did a quick little avatar or like a little AI image for one of my current clients because he's currently getting frustrated with, he's eating, but he's having a hard time hitting the macros right and things like that. And so I go in there and I said, hey, I think an ideal weight for you would be about 185 based on where you're at, your height, you know, because we want you to be athletic. We ain't just losing weight. We're not getting skinny. We want you to be athletic. And so I put that equation in there, 185, 5'7". And I said, we'll be a little bit conservative, 15% body fat. I just sent him that picture and he was like, oh man. I was like, yes, you could absolutely look like that. I said, even if you get down a little bit lower, you could look more. But I said, you're kind of built like a, little bit shorter linebacker. I was like, we work with that because you have a certain body type. Um, so again, it's not just checks and balances. It's not, I coach daily, online, sometimes on a computer, but most times through my phone app because that's all they need is the app on their phone. But and then you have I have them in groups. I have all male service, I have all female service, and then I have an all clients group. I do a lot of live coaching. Here's what I'm doing right now. Oh, hey, I'm at the gym. I just thought about this. So there's a lot of live daily coaching that I do as well. And then the interaction between the communities. And then when I do my group calls, I do like 6 a week. Um, they get this. And then that's how you inspire, right? And then people will do it because now they'll be like, damn, somebody really believes in me. I'm like, yes, it's in there. Let's get it. Let's dig it out.
All right. Well, normally we would ask if you could go back, would you do it all again? But I would think that you certainly would make pretty much all the same choices all the way.
I think I got a little bit lucky along the way.
Let me rephrase it a little bit then. Would you still take that time off after graduating high school, and then because you didn't enlist until you were 20, right? So would if you could go back, would you join right after high school?
Nope.
You'd still take those couple years off?
I probably would have done one enlistment and gotten out. Um, yeah, there's probably about a 90% chance of that happening because that 2 year time frame. Again, I told you I lived almost an entire lifetime in that short span
Yeah.
because I was fresh out of high school and basically paying my own rent and be like, hey, here we are. I had my own car, you know. Um, I went to night school a little bit, right? So I mean, here I am at 17, 18, like I'm living like an adult. I got money in my pocket, and had I not, basically hit that low point where even at that young age of 20, I was like, there's no way I can live like this, right? It's either going to end with jail or it's just going to abruptly end, or I'm just going to slowly peter out, until I wither away to nothing. And had I had that, not had that in my pocket, because um, let's see, what did I say in my retirement video? I said, oh, I needed structure. When the Marine Corps gave me that, I couldn't let it go because I had structure with my grandparents, and then I had like 2.5 years, but I didn't have none. But I knew because of the way they raised me and that big generation gap, and not, but I didn't have anybody to do it for me, and I was still young, so I know the Marines will do it for me. From what I heard from my buddy, yeah, let's go, bud. You know, so no, I wouldn't. Looking back, I wouldn't change it because I probably wouldn't have stayed in the whole time.
Raj, you got anything?
It's been a pleasure talking with you this evening. I'm good, Dan.
If people are interested in sitting down and talking to you and getting setting goals for themselves, health and fitness wise, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you through social media, website, whatever it is?
Yeah, it's typically through either Instagram Messenger or Facebook Messenger. It's typically how we do it. I mean, I have a website landing page and QR codes and stuff like that. But you know, Joe Adcox, Bulldog Essential Fitness. Um, yeah, it's mainly through the social media.
Yeah, we'll link to all of
Awesome,
that in the post.
awesome. One last thing, where did the Bulldog moniker come from?
So that was actually my call sign in Iraq when I was a staff sergeant. It was Bulldog. Um, at that time, they kind of let us pick, and since we were on smaller comms at the company level and everything else between squad leaders, and it was just there. And then it just kind of stuck. And now I ride with Leathernecks Motorcycle Club, and my road name is Bulldog. My business is Bulldog. So I'm literally like Bulldog. You see my cell phone? What does it say?
I just kind of laugh if you try to pick your own call sign, but your friends overrule, and you're like, I want to be Bulldog, and they're like, oh no, oh no, 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 no,
Oh
no,
no,
you're
you're
cupcake,
Chihuahua.
you're cupcake. Oh man. So all right,
Joe, this has been awesome. Thanks so much, man. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, gentlemen.
Dan, the two of us just sat down for about 2 hours and had a lengthy discussion with a senior non-commissioned officer in the United States Marine Corps. We did not make a single crayon joke. Are we not growing as people or what?
Over the course of these many months that you and I have been sitting down and talking to people,
So
I think
many
that
months.
I think that we have exhibited remarkable amounts of personal growth.
I mean, the restraint, the maturity. I mean, that's what we're known for.
Yes, strength and maturity, integrity and character.
So much. All right. So, what did you think of our friend, Mister Joe Adcox?
It's it's interesting, kind of going to the end and then back to the beginning. His perspective on how if he had gone in immediately out of high school, he would have done one tour and gotten out. He needed to go through a couple of rough years, which we didn't really get into. But he needed to go
Yeah.
through a couple of rough years to kind of see, I guess, what the real world is like, and knowing that he needed that structure that the military provides. Not necessarily the Marine Corps. I mean, he didn't necessarily go out seeking the Marine Corps. Uh, a buddy who had been sort of talking to a recruiter, got him to go with him one time. Um, maybe it would have been different if he had taken him to see an Air Force recruiter or a Coast Guard recruiter for that matter.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting that because of those couple of rough years after he graduated, it gave him a decent amount of maturity to know that he needed something more structured.
Interesting. That was a different take on our usual wrap up question, which I think was very suitable for this particular discussion. So, well done, sir.
Everywhere along the way, he from basic training, he pretty much knew that he was going to make it a career because in
Yeah.
basic training he wanted to be a DI.
Can you imagine?
He knew everywhere along the way, like he said several times, he sort of mapped out his entire career. He knew where he was going almost from the very beginning of his service.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the steps along the way or the places that he would go, but he knew what the end state was, and
Yeah.
that is something a lot of young people, you know, 19, 20, 21 year olds certainly don't have. Um, I didn't. I certainly
Yeah.
didn't. Not at that age. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly respect that. I think I was at the 10-year mark before I even figured out what I wanted to do.
Oh, I was at the 10-year mark, and I actually called our good buddy Kyle because I was teetering, man. I didn't know if I was going to be staying in or getting out. I had to, in order to accept an assignment, I had to reenlist again, and I was teetering. Didn't know what I was going to do, and I called our good buddy Kyle and talked to him about a good deal of things, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to stay in then. So
And you took life and career advice from Kyle, or as I call him, Kale.
it wasn't necessarily life and career advice, but it was.
uh,
He was a solid sounding board for me at that point.
well,
Yeah,
that is certainly important.
yeah.
Okay, what else about Mr. Adcox?
We've talked about it with previous guests that nobody does deployments um, or what we think of as deployments quite like the Army does in length. Um, the other services will go somewhere for a few months and then they'll turn around and they'll come back, and I think that their turnaround time is quicker also. But he mentioned it a couple of times that you're gonna in the Marines you're gonna go to a duty station and you're gonna deploy twice before you move on to the next duty station. If you're on the fleet rotation or whatever it is, and that is definitely an interesting way to do things. I imagine that helps you prepare personally, um, things in your personal life with your family, with your spouse, with your children, knowing that that is what is coming. With this assignment, I'm going to deploy at least twice. So
Yeah,
be ready for this. Let's make sure that we have this in order. But then also preparing your troops, knowing that hey, another one is coming down the pipe. We need to be ready. We just got back, but we know we have another one coming in X amount of months, even if we don't have orders for it yet. So let's go ahead and start hammering these basics down. You know,
yeah.
but, yeah, I imagine that's got to be
It's kind
pretty
of a
cool.
paradox because the Marine Corps is the nation's kind of in extremis quick reaction force. Also, that makes it a little bit more predictable. So it's predictably unpredictable, if that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I got a little dose of that being an 82nd guy too. When you're on GRF, like you know something dumb is going to happen, whether it's real world or training. You know something dumb's going to happen. You just don't exactly know when, but you're pretty much prepared for the crazy. So
Yeah,
yeah,
but he had a lot of interesting assignments along the way.
yeah,
Um, whether it was going going back to Paris Island as a DI, uh, going to a rotational unit, and then going to Embry Riddle to pretty much be an ROTC instructor. Um, he checked a lot of interesting boxes along the way.
yeah,
Um, in a lot of the services, you kind of have a lane that you stay in. You pick a path, and you're not going to deviate too far from it. But in each step along his path, or in each
yeah,
assignment along his way, um, he was doing something. He was doing something interesting, something different, and that's pretty cool. And I can
yeah.
also relate to the fact that he retired out of Paris Island, where it all began, because I retired out of Fort Benning, where it all
Yeah, I
began
was
for
gonna
me.
bring that up, but you beat me to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Plus he was on the trail from the same place he went to basic. So just
which
like you.
I also did. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, of course,
yeah.
for me, uh, every time I went to Fort Benning, I told myself, "Man, I'm glad that's over. I'll never have to come back here again." And the Army kept on sending me back to Fort Benning.
They pull me back in.
Every time I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Okay. Well, we're really happy to have Joe on the show. He's our first senior NCO from the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
So
It is. I'd like to get more into it with him about some of the fitness programming stuff. I know how to. I know part of what he does is consulting with clients, seeing what their goals are, seeing what their physical limitations are, past injuries they may have, things like. Got it. Used to do that as well. But the 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 technology aspect, he said so much of it is done through an app that they carry around on, his clients carry around on their phones, and
yeah,
it's, you know, that is really interesting to me as to how he makes that work. No,
yeah,
I would certainly like to talk with him more about that. Perhaps we'll even have him back on the show.
yeah. We have an open invitation with Joe to come back on for a quick hit and talk through just that.
Yeah.
So so again, thanks, Joe. We appreciate you coming on, and of course, being Facebook friends with us, and now we can say we're real friends.
It's interesting when those two worlds collide.
Interesting.
I know for the audience, Roger has done an excellent job on social media of
I don't know
amassing
about excellent.
followers and connections and things like that.
I've done
But
stuff.
he's done stuff. But I have to constantly remind him that these aren't his real friends. And so when
It's
we
all I
actually
have,
get to
Dan.
make the two of them come together,
It's
it's
all I
great.
have. You're going to take this from me?
All right, you got anything else on Joe?
What? No, not on Mr. Adcox. I do want to make an administrative point before we move on to the final phase of this operation, and that's this week that we're recording. We've lost two um, celebrities. So we lost Theo this week. So
Yep.
is it Malcolm Jamal Warner
Yep.
and Ozzy passed away today at the day we were recording here, which is July 22nd. So
Yep.
the Ozman is no more. So
He has gotten off of that crazy train.
yeah, the last stop.
And
So we
Malcolm Jamal Warner obviously was key in our youth uh, from uh, from the Cosby Show, and then he had his own show. Um, it was him and another guy. I can't remember the name of it.
I know
But
what you're talking about, and I'm coming up short too. Yeah,
for a younger audience, perhaps he was Andre Bennett from Community. He was the dastardly fiend that cheated on Shirley with a stripper that Jeff had gotten out of I don't know, fine or whatever.
yeah. Loved
Yeah.
Community. Great show for anybody who hasn't watched it. And if Shirley was here, she would say, "That's nice."
Well,
So
she's down in Louisiana helping out a crippled detective, Stephen Weber.
that's right. All right.
Another fantastic actor
All
who,
right.
thank God, is
So
still.
Godspeed to these two gentlemen. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
instrumental in the foundations of our youth.
Both of them instrumental in our youth, not for totally different reasons.
Yes,
uh,
Godspeed. So,
yes.
Free Fire.
Yes, sir.
You and I have a podcast and a YouTube show that we do
The
for a
first I've heard of
variety
it.
of reasons. We enjoy it. We love it. It's awesome. But we also seek entertainment in podcast or YouTube format. So, excluding, religion, politics, what are some podcasts that you listen to for pure entertainment purposes,
Okay. Yeah,
or
'cause
YouTube channels, shows that you like for
I'm a
same thing?
big podcast guy. Most of what I listen to is religion and politics. So if we're going to exclude those, I really, really, really enjoyed I guess it would have been in 2020, when, and the timing I believe was coincidental, but my wife and I, one of our favorite shows of all time was Scrubs. So back in 2020, they started a Scrubs rewatch podcast, which coincided perfectly with the lockdown and the shutdown and everything that came with COVID, if you want to call that perfect. And so I enjoyed Zach and Donald kind of going back through, and it took them years to get through from from the pilot all the way to the last episode.
Oh yeah, hundreds of
That
episodes.
includes the terrible season. We ended up listening to doing the rewatch of that last season, which wasn't very good anyway, just for fun. But I think when it was all said and done, I mean, I think it took 4 years to get all the way through that. If you just think, 8 seasons of a sitcom that has 20 something episodes per season, and they're releasing these things every other week, do the math on that. It took years to kind of comb through it, but I really enjoyed that. Not necessarily safe for children, by the way. So,
Michael Imperioli and Steven Sciarippa did the same thing with Sopranos. It was Talking Sopranos.
yeah.
That also coincided with the lockdowns as well. It was awesome.
James Gandolfini would have been passed away by then, right? I can't remember what year he passed, but yeah, okay. So the Scrubs rewatch podcast was a good one. I enjoy. I don't know if this counts as religious. There's one called Haunted Cosmos that I really like, which is it's two kind of young Christian pastors who have a different take on, think X-Files kind of stuff. So cryptids and mysteries and just things that are just kind of quirky and weird that your average X-Files fan would like, but they're coming at it from a Christian worldview. That's a really good one. Lots, I like Mike Clay and Buck. I like anything Mary Catherine Ham does. She's a little bit more topical kind of stuff. She's great. I could go on. I'm not a sports guy, so sports ball is not my thing. It's not that I don't like sports. I just don't like people. I don't like listening to other people talk about it because they're all wrong. So, no. That's what I mean when I say I'm not a sports guy. I know what a Keith Olbermann fan you were, so I didn't mean to offend you. But pretty Miss Perfect.
He lost his mind.
Yeah, he lost his ever-loving mind. So I don't know. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I mean, I could go on, but I won't. So I'll flip it around back to you.
Yeah. Well, I do like to stay in the sports realm for entertainment purposes. There is probably about once a year I have to do a great podcast purge.
Same.
So shows that I've been listening to or whatever, I have to ditch them off. But Two Pros and a Cup of Joe is amazing. It's a Fox Sports radio show, but I listen to the podcast format. It's 3 hours every day, Monday through Friday, and it's got two former NFL players and one knucklehead that he's the not moderator. That's not the right word. He's the ham it up guy. But it's a good way to keep in touch with the sports ball, as you call it. But it is primarily focused on football, which is why I like it. Plus, they can be kind of juvenile at times, which let's be honest. 3 hours, just three guys sitting around talking. Yeah, it's going to eventually have some fart jokes. So I like that one.
How dare you, sir?
And of course, because I love movies, there is another podcast. It only releases about 6 episodes a year, and it's run by Ben Mankiewicz, who is his family is like Hollywood royalty. Going back, and his grandfather, his great uncle, his dad, screenwriters, directors, whatever. But he's one of the guys that works for TCM, and so he has this podcast, which off the top of my head I can't remember the name of now. But he's done series on, speaking of the Sopranos, Peter Bogdanovich, who played Tony's psychiatrist.
Hmm.
Um,
I would not have known that. Okay.
Elliot Kupferberg, I believe, was
Yeah,
his
I can
character's
picture
name.
his face. Yeah.
Yeah, the big old glasses. Yeah, that was Peter Bogdanovich, who was huge in Hollywood until he made a couple of bad choices. Um, he's
Hollywood
done
has
one on
standards.
the total catastrophe that was Bonfire of the Vanities, the movie, with a whole bunch of stars to include a young Bruce Willis.
Amazing book,
And
by the way. But
oh yeah, but the movie based
yeah,
on the book was a disaster. Um,
correct.
and he did a great one a year or
Aptly
two
named.
ago on Pam Grier, who was just awesome. And of course, she's still alive, so she was actually
Foxy
sitting
Brown.
down and talking to him.
Yep.
Did one on Lucille Ball. It's awesome. I'll have to. I can't. The one that he's on right now is on the Cleopatra movie that uh, was the biggest bomb probably ever in all of Hollywood. It
Was that
forced the Fox studio into bankruptcy.
the Jada Pinkett Smith thing? Or
No,
am I,
no, we're talking like it's 1964, 65
oh,
movie.
this is
Elizabeth Taylor.
Elizabeth Taylor. I was about to say Liv Tyler.
Yeah,
Would have been way
and
off.
Richard Burton.
Yes. Okay.
Um, yeah, but his great uncle was the director of that movie, and it pretty much destroyed his career.
Speaking of bonfires.
Yeah, but that's an amazing one too. I wish I could remember the name of it. Um, and then of course most of the rest of them that I listen to are history ones.
Yeah.
So you've got the whole Rex Factor family with Rex Factor and Totalis Rankium, and I used to listen to Pontifacts, but no, it's basically two two friends sitting down talking about Roman emperors or pirates or presidents, whatever, and then they rate them on the various um, factors, and
And
then
that sounds like you and I on a Wednesday evening.
yeah, and then they then have like a playoff series and stuff. It's fun. It's fun
Okay.
for our
I,
for our
I'm not.
British listeners. They will probably know Rex Factor and Totalis Rankium because all four of those hosts are English.
Do you sip a glass of Chianti while you listen to that with your smoking jacket on?
No,
No.
no.
Okay. All right, I have to give an honorable mention to it. There is a political podcast that I really like that I'm going to give a shameless plug to, which is I do love the Ruthless. It's a small handful of kind of Beltway. They're GOP insider guys, and they're just hysterically funny. And it's they go a little blue sometimes, so just be warned. But man, these guys are really smart. I know these guys are real smart, and they are funny. And it's a good. It's bi-weekly, so good to go. Perfect.
And then for YouTube channels, I already said Talking Sopranos, but they've been done for years now. I like Black and White Sports, who one of the hosts is a Navy vet. So that always helps to get my attention is to have a veteran being part of your program.
Maybe he'll come on the show.
But maybe, yeah. If anybody knows the guys over at Black and White Sports, yeah, we'd love to have them on the show. But they talk about sports and then a little bit of pop culture or how culture is affecting sports, stuff like that. But it's mostly topical, stuff of the day, the moment, whatever. Somebody signs a new contract, somebody got arrested, somebody got traded, stuff like that. They've been having a whole bunch of fun with the WNBA nonsense.
Oh, you're talking about the pay us what we're owed or what we deserve or whatever.
Oh, I
Careful,
mean,
careful what you wish for.
well, I mean, even before that,
If
the
I were, if I
WNBA is
were,
always full of nonsense.
if I were a member of an insolvent organization, I would not go around demanding to get paid what I deserve.
Fair enough.
So, all right,
Yeah.
all right, my friend. Well, we thank everybody for being a part of the show with us, for listening to Mr. Joe Adcox, for listening to us ramble on about our podcasts. We're both big podcast guys, so please like, share, and subscribe the show. Give us a 5-star rating. Give us a generous review, if you will, please.
Yes, we actually have some reviews that we need to read the next time that we've got somebody coming in studio in person. But
Okay.
Other than that, yeah, share the episode with friends and family. If anybody listening is interested in coming on or has a friend or family member that maybe they'd like to have their story recorded, you can always reach out to us through social media or go over to the website, tracerburnout.com, and there's a contact us little
Towards the bottom.
link,
Yeah.
and you can send us an email, and we'll get back to you. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
And remember, your service matters.
All right, let's do this.
Woo. Okay.
Hold on, let me check one thing real quick.
I still like the angelic aura in the background.
Yeah, well, the sun's setting. Because I usually do a lot of my calls outside, like on the back porch, because now the sun's on. You know what I mean? So the background, the natural background, is very nice. Make sure it's not going to fall. See, that's what I didn't want. That is what I did not.
He's 5'4". Dan, cut him some slack.
So y'all get to see the behind the scenes now.
Is it you have a sophisticated studio just like me?
Yes.
Which I'm in my bedroom, so yeah. Actually, I wanted to grab something. Oh. I have a prop. He just wanted to do the Victor stance there for us.
Not really, but that's what's going to be.
And this is all going to be in the episode.
I was gonna say that's B-roll for you.